So good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing today?
Awesome.
So I'm Mary Kaufmann. I'm Chief Learning Officer at Pillar Technology, and I am so honored to be here. And in fact, I bet these four guys on stage with me are wondering, why did you invite me here today? You guys wondering why I invited you here today? Well, I'm really inviting you here today because I want to tell you a story. So in 1942, James Bender wrote a book called How to Talk Well. And in his book, he related the story of a farmer who grew award-winning corn every year at the state fair. So think about it. 1942, different time of life. Big deal. This guy, every year, this farmer, earned the blue ribbon. This reporter, one year, was interviewing him and learned something very interesting about how he grew his corn. He learned that this farmer gave away his award-winning seed corn to every one of his neighbors. The reporter was astonished, and he said, "Sir, how can you afford to give away your prized possession, the thing that you covet, that you treasure? How can you just give it away for free?" And he said, "Sir, don't you know, the wind picks up the pollen from the neighboring fields and swirls that pollen from field to field. If I allow my neighbors to grow inferior corn, then cross-pollination over time will steadily degrade the quality of my corn. So if I am to grow good corn, I must help my neighbors grow good corn." And so it is with all of us. So I have invited four incredible innovators to the stage today to share their very best seed corn with you. And we have an amazing lineup of conversation, and really the preparation is coming from all of you. They don't really know exactly what we're going to be asking, but the power of this is, our dream for this conversation was to we're at the heart of Ohio, we're in corn country, right? And we're at the heart of Ohio, and we want to get to the heart of innovation. We want to really understand what drives these incredible people. So and really, when you think about it, it ties back to the hackathon. You know, the great team who's contributing in this incredible cause. We have no idea what's going to be the end result from that. We have no idea the number of lives that are going to be changed. We're going to give it away for free. When you give the best of yourself and expect nothing in return, incredible things happen. And I have to say, so many of you, I've enjoyed reconnecting and seeing you, so many that I've known, and I know that's your heart. I know that's you. And so we couldn't think of a better way to set the stage. So can you give this team a round of applause, and then I'll be introducing them. Okay. So, listen and see if these words bring back memories for you. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the one thing that you cannot do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are generally the ones that do. Let me introduce you to the crazy ones. And let me ask you, do you guys like that? I'm calling you crazy. I told them I was going to call them crazy. Anybody remember that? Where that came from? Somebody does. Where was it? Steve Jobs, that's right. So this was the ad campaign, the slogan that Apple ran in 1997, and it was designed by TBWA, Chait and Day advertising firm, and this is arguably the most famous ad campaign that lived the longest shelf life of all, 5 years. And I could not think of a better way to introduce this incredible team of people up here than to start with those words and to challenge all of us to think that way. So let me start. Let's see. I'll start with Rich, who's down here. This is Rich Langdale, and Rich is a serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and mentor who started his first business called Digital Storage at OSU. He was able to fund this business by selling his car for $5,000. Anybody sound familiar? Rich co-founded and co-funded the Center for Entrepreneurship at the OSU at the Ohio State University in 2001. His favorite quote is, "The secret to happiness is low expectations."
Be ready
Anybody
for that
remember
today.
my talk from yesterday? Do you remember? I know some of you remember. What did I say, right? The best advice he's ever received is, look at what you did to cause a problem and work on fixing it, as opposed to looking for blame elsewhere. Does Rich prefer a cat or a dog? He prefers buffalo. So you won't forget him. Okay, to my left, Kevin Fisher. And Kevin and I worked together a long time ago, and someone booked him without even telling me, so that was kind of a funny story. His birthday's on tax day. So y'all can add that to your PDAs. Associate Vice President of Digital Marketing at Nationwide, where he leads client-facing digital teams. Kevin is a ScrumAlliance Certified ScrumMaster and a Certified Product Owner. He's trained 150-plus associates, well more than that, and transitioned to agile methods. He's experienced in internet, product management, technology consulting for insurance, financial services, and high-tech companies. He is also not the fictional character from the soap opera The Young and the Restless. If you Google him, that is not what you will find, okay? So to my right, Mecca Don. By the way, it was his music that you were hearing just a few moments ago. Hip-hop artist, attorney, entrepreneur, actor, and former OSU football player. Mecca graduated from OSU cum laude with a degree in political science and NYU Law School. As an attorney, Mecca has signed over a dozen music licensing agreements. He took to crowdfunding on Indigo.com, featured by MTV, ESPN, and New York Daily News. Thank you. I can't read my handwriting. His goal was to raise $12,500 in 35 days, and he ended up raising $21,000, and that time with over 300 funders. His debut album reached #2 on Amazon's hottest release in his first week, and I asked, what's his favorite cologne, and he said gasoline. Okay? All right, and last but not least, Brett Stutz, Senior Vice President for the CTO for the pharmaceutical segment at Cardinal Health, where he is focused on delivering technology-enabled services to improve clinical efficiency and patient care, and a whole lot more. Brent has 25 years of software development, IT strategy, and operations experience. Prior to joining Cardinal Health, Brent led a commercial software organization for MCI WorldCom, facing and on internet solutions targeted to Fortune 500 companies. He has been instrumental in leading, tearing down walls, building bridges, and creating a new way of life in the creation and development of a new innovation center that is the Commercial Technology Center. And actually, it's on the front page today of the Columbus Dispatch. Brent is quoted. And so, give a round of applause to our panel today. Thanks, everyone. You mind saying that over there? So I did actually memorize all of that, but I figured, I didn't want to show any of y'all up by just saying all that out loud. So, we got cards. Okay. So I wanted to start today by opening the line of conversation and talk about inspiration. Because in order for you to innovate, you've got to think differently. And so I'm just going to open it up. They're all mic'd. There are no rules to this, okay? And arm wrestling to get more time is allowed, okay? And I'm doing CrossFit now, so I might win, right? Okay, so here's the thing. What inspires you? How do you get your inspiration, and how did you get started?
I guess my biggest inspiration is usually fear. We have a lot of businesses that we're invested in. We look at changing business climates, and you're looking to see who's putting you out of business, and then what do you have to do differently to make sure you evolve and get ahead. So maybe not the best motivator in the world, but that's a pretty good one to keep you getting up every day. Good.
Good. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Well, I just have kind of a natural curiosity about everything, so I'm constantly learning. And
he's the father of 5 girls?
Yeah, so I'm
so
busy with 5 girls. But I tend to want to explore and learn as much as I possibly can, and then spread that knowledge. So I do a fair amount of speaking and educating, even within our own company.
Good.
And like, if you listen to Srini's conversation this morning, a lot of those mega trends he's talking about absolutely affect Nationwide. We're a 100-year-old company, but bunch of things that are happening outside of us we need to be very aware of, and we've actually had some I talked to him afterwards. I said we've had some success educating our top executives why they absolutely need to understand and be aware of and care about self-driving cars and home automation and all those things that are going to change our business model. And so I enjoy actually being in the midst of those conversations quite a bit.
Great. Great. And he and I have had a few healthy debates in our time as well, right?
Yes.
Great. Mecca.
Yeah, can you hear me? Is my mic on?
Try it, and if not, I'll give you this one.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I would say I'm inspired by actually the youth, just realizing how they are our future, and realizing obviously music is my #1 passion, and realizing that through music you can reach a lot of different people, and in a lot of ways it can be political. And so for me, I realized that my unique positioning as someone who, was in sports and in music, but also who's taking the professional route as well, I can help kind of shape, a different image of what it means to be cool to the youth. So that's what I'm inspired by.
Yes, I told him that when I drove home last night, I felt really cool. I'd been hanging out with him, and then I felt less cool as I drove home. Can you all relate to that? Yeah, right. Brent.
Yeah, I get to share a table here with him, so I feel cooler already.
Yeah.
So, I think what inspires me is, just technology, staying close to technology, following it, seeing how people are innovating and then trying to figure out how a large company like Cardinal Health in what I think is a really cool industry, the healthcare industry, which is going to change more in the next 5 years than it has in the last 50. How can we take all these things that are going on and bring these into our industry? So it's just a little bit of, I think, curiosity and continually learning and kind of keeping an eye on what's going on in multiple markets and seeing where we can get those things to collide and do something interesting.
Great. So I really wanted to have them just speak from their heart, and so really this is just open. What caused you to say yes to your dream? What's your why? How about if I start with you, Mecca?
Sure. So, my story is, I went to school, I graduated from Ohio State, moved to New York, went to law school, NYU, worked at a big firm in New York on Fifth Avenue, and I always knew the whole time that my passion was music. But I come from a very educated family, and education was always very important. And I also realized that education would be important for me as I'm navigating through the music industry. But eventually one day, after about a year of working at the firm, I said, what, it's time to go. It's time to jump out. And I don't know exactly what poked at me, but I knew that it was coming. And so for me, I just felt like there's a bigger opportunity here that I don't want to miss. And a lot of people that I talk to, older people and people in their 70s and 80s, they always tell me the same thing, which is, you don't want to get to my age and have regrets. And that regrets is probably the most painful type of pain that you'll ever feel in your life. So for me, I took that to heart, and I said, it's time to go. Let's jump out and make this happen. And that's kind of what got my start.
Awesome, great. How about you, Brent?
My why?
Yeah, your why.
My why. I think some people are, driven by, titles. Some people are driven by different things, and some people are just learners, and they're kind of driven by continually learning. I think that's one of the things that that really defines me. And as I really try to become a student of the healthcare industry and really figure out what's going on there, and not be tagged as just an IT guy, but really someone that actually cares about the business that we're in. And when I hear mantras in the business, like, we want to triple in 3, and, tripling in 3 from a revenue perspective is interesting, but I think what's more interesting is, how can we drive the healthcare costs down in the United States? I heard an economist from Vanderbilt say that, you could take every privately held asset, so my house, my cars, your house, your car's that dish that just broke, and even all the publicly traded companies, and sell all that, and that's barely enough to pay for our liabilities with Medicaid, Medicare going forward. So, there are some real big meaty problems to solve, and I think getting people to focus on those and solving those problems is something that I'm passionate about a lot more than just doubling a company in 3. So I think it's that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Great. And when I think about you, Rich, you started companies. You've I'm sure had only success, right? Right? Pick some, because there's so many things you could choose from as far as your why. It can be today's why. Share what your framework is and your why you said yes.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll start with a win. So I get asked a lot, teaching here at the Center for Entrepreneurship and being involved with a lot of student groups, when do you know you're ready to do something innovative, do something new, be an entrepreneur? And what I usually have ended up with is when you stop asking that question. When your experiences around you, your research that you've done, the customers you've interacted with for your potential product or service are so compelling that you don't feel like it's a risk anymore. And so a lot of innovators don't really see risk, so maybe you're kind of self-fulfilling, and that's why we still have failures. But that would be the win. The why for me started that I found a personal passion. I think most people that have some kind of success early in life have something that they were latching onto. And I didn't end up actually doing what I thought I was going to do, but I remember at 12 years old seeing my first hologram and thinking, I'm going to make a hologram, darn it. And I learned that you had to learn about math and physics. I didn't care much about math and physics, I didn't think, but I did. I studied it so I could make my hologram. Came to Ohio State because they had a laser here. And I went into the physics department and said, I want to make cool pictures with your laser. And they said, no, you've got to do something that's important to mankind. And so the idea of putting the Library of Congress on a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter cube of glass was being kicked around philosophically at the time. I said, well, I'm going to study that. Actually didn't spend a lot of time studying that, but I did get a hold of the laser, made some cool pictures while I was here. And along the way, I was trying to ferret how is this going to turn into a business. And I only needed $50 million to start a holographic storage business. And as you'd imagine, 20-year-old kid, not finished college yet. Most people laughed when I tried to go out and raise capital. Nowadays, you just need a napkin and a garage, I guess. But it was a little hard to raise the capital. So I was lucky. I was blessed with the two most important traits of someone trying to get something started, which were ignorance and no money. And so ignorance forced me to go out and kind of figure out what was missing from the market, and no money required me to get partners, get people engaged, customers, vendors, and that started my first business. And then, as I said, from there, a lot of the motivation was just staying in business. We were the world's largest wholesaler in computer storage, but wholesale and computer storage hardly exist today like they did. Things changed, so we became marketing businesses, logistics businesses. Those became really technical. We started investing in technology companies. So innovation is just kind of part of our culture now.
Great, thank you so much. And Kevin, so I have to preface this a little bit. So when I think of the crazy one, I think of 5 girls at home, like wow, right? And here's the best news, is they all look like Nora. She's really blessed, right? I do love you, Kevin. So what's your why?
Well, the why is I've probably early on, even before we worked together several years ago, I had figured out that I really enjoyed creative problem solving. And there's obviously many different approaches for that, from very structured approaches, from like a McKinsey style to others. But when you mash up a bunch of best practices together, it's just very fulfilling and exciting for me. And so that's where Mary and I worked together at Longaberger, when we were trying to solve a bunch of pretty weighty issues and pretty exciting problems, I thought. And I love that challenge. I love that whole process and the outcomes. And even if you're in a large company, those senior executives, they're looking for people to help them overcome and figure out meaty challenges, and they don't have all the answers. And so there's plenty of opportunities to really affect change, regardless of the organizational size, and that's really what I get excited about.
It's actually a great lead into the next sort of theme of questions, and it's really around overcoming that where life can feel like a boulder, or the organization can feel like it's just, this big rock and you're trying to change it. I've had conversations with a lot of you, and how do you persevere in the face of structure? How do you innovate? And I'm just going to open it. Anyone who wants to jump in. This is a very real issue. We talked about this with many of you yesterday, and if you looked at every one of these cards, almost every one of these cards has a theme. How do you keep the wind from blowing you back so far, or something holding you back, like gravity holding you into the ground? How do you free yourself from that and really make things happen? And I know deep down in you, there were some turning points in your life. So just let's have a conversation around that. How do you overcome that, and what was your turning point? Anyone?
I'll start. So I think we fit that to a T. Cardinal Health, large IT organization. There's probably not a lot of Cardinal folks out here. Maybe there are, but we've been a traditional modified waterfall kind of organization. Really broke out into this team does this team does this team does this team does this, and that doesn't work when you're trying to iterate really quick or innovate really quick and get things to customers, to hospitals, to cancer clinics, to retail independent pharmacies, to have them try stuff, give you feedback, and then go again. If you have to go through the whole cycle again, as you guys all know, that takes a long time. So what I had some fortunate help at the top of Cardinal Health, where I think they realized that they wanted the commercial technology division to be different. We had a CEO who wanted to be different, and he actually ran into me in the hallway in our office, and he said, Brent, I really feel like we're missing a whole group of people at Cardinal Health, these creative types, these millennials, these people who are comfortable not dressed like this, but dressed in sandals and jeans and t-shirts, and maybe they have a tat sleeve. Who really knows? But they're never going to feel welcome coming into our wool dress slacks, Brooks Brothers shirt kind of place, and so that's perceived as a little stuffy. He said, I think we need to kind of, get out of the building and almost do reverse M&A. So, and it was actually his idea as the CEO of one of our large segments, with a lot of support from the CIOs. We took all those people out of IT, we blended in some other unique individuals, and we created a whole new, almost like a whole new division, and we call it Fuse. It is an agile shop. It's kind of a whole new culture from the ground up. So, but it's hard, even though we've done that, there's still an immense amount of teams that, they want to help. And I truly believe they want to help, but they want to help with a lot of legal help. They want to help with a lot of marketing help. They want to help with a lot of branding and coloring. And you're getting inundated with people that want to help. There's a large gravitational pull from, I call it the mother ship, to help. And I think we just need to really, everybody who's working on that product, be around the table and moving it forward. And we've had a lot of success, but it's been a year journey to get it to this point.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in a company for almost a decade that had 77,000 employees, and there was a lot of structure. Anyone, right? But we did find ways to bring product to market, and it was sometimes painful. But it's called, you have a bigger goal in mind, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Brent. Anyone else want to tackle that one?
I used an analogy of a big boulder. So if I wanted to move a big boulder, I put it on a hill, get it rolling. And for us, that's kind of vision and culture, getting the momentum going through, being very clear about where we're trying to get to, how to get there, and dragging the culture along. We try not to put too much structure in place. I think the lack of structure helps. When companies get bigger, we create skunk works. Like you're describing, take a group of people that have an idea, give them some funding, go stick them in a corner, and that's how, by the mid '90s, we had this wholesale computer storage business. We had 8 other businesses, and we formed an investment operating company that set up over those 8 businesses to resource them and support them and kind of reallocate resources around them, because they were just skunk works that kept popping up, and each of those created new opportunities, and some of those opportunities actually became bigger, better, more valuable than the original business that we had started. And so I think you just gotta feed that innovation, break it out, and keep it going through some vision and direction.
That's the first time I ever thought of visualizing a boulder at the top of a hill, but that is the best way to move it, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So that's great. Keep that visual in mind.
I was going to continue with the allegory and say, to tag on what Brent and Rich said, you actually need somebody to start pushing the boulder. So you mentioned that you had some air cover from a very senior executive. I know many of you attended the 10 o'clock session where like Tim Heller and Steve Farley and others talked about the Agile transformation that happened at Nationwide. And that happened throughout the years, but one of the aspects was we had some air cover from some senior level IT executives that basically gave those small teams the permission to, quote, break the rules, right? And do things a new way and bring some new ideas into the fold, which now have grown and had wide adoption. So sometimes you do need senior executive support. And the other thing Brent said is very important is sometimes it needs to be kind of taken out of the building, because there's culture issues, there's process control issues, there's the way things usually get done. I know at Nationwide it takes a village to do anything, no matter how big or how small. And when you read about other companies that do it particularly well, Amazon Prime was developed with a team of 4 guys in a boathouse over their headquarters in a matter of weeks, because they had key people, including legal, in that room, and it was a 2-pizza team. So that's how other companies have to do it. Even
What did you
ones
call
that
it? What?
are, two pizza team.
Two pizza?
That's not my words. That's there. It's the
I thought that's what he said.
Yeah.
We talked about pizza yesterday.
Yeah, it's the team size is, you know, the team size that would eat two pizzas, yeah. But even companies as innovative as Amazon still have to do that to execute on innovative ideas.
That's great. That's great. And we're going to tag on to that question a little bit, but I want to hear more from you now.
Yeah, I would just say that don't be scared to lead. I mean, I think that a lot of people are kind of scared of leading, particularly because I think that they feel like people are so scared of change. And I think that people are scared of change, but they're not opposed to it. So I think the approach a lot of times matters more than necessarily even the idea a lot of times. So realize that people are actually waiting for you, whether it's in your corporate culture or if it's the consumer market. People are actually waiting for someone to kind of come with a new idea and lead the charge, and just don't be scared. That's basically how.
So I read a ton about his life after I met him. I was really inspired, and you had some opposition. You had some people really challenging you. What are you doing? Talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I left the firm, I mean, you guys can imagine, it's, you know, big job, top 10 law firm, $160,000 a year, and I left to do something very uncertain, somewhat taboo. Hip hop is a kind of.
Does that sound a little crazy?
People call me crazy.
I think it sounds awesome.
And I think, you know, I think you have to be a little crazy to do it, but I was so passionate about what I was doing and so not passionate about what I was doing before that I felt like I had nothing to lose. And I think one thing that people kind of get scared of a lot of times is they feel like every decision they make is either makes or breaks their life. And then you realize, and you look back on a lot of the decisions that you've made, yeah, things have helped, you know, they've shifted things one way or another, but they didn't necessarily make or break you as a person. So I think confidence is really the big thing, is just believing in yourself that no matter what situation you find yourself in, you'll figure out a way to navigate. And so for me, just having confidence in myself and also having the passion, which is the most important thing, because that's what woke me up in the morning and kept me up late at night. I think once you have that, you know, you just go.
That's awesome. And you know, when we chatted last night and I was driving home, I was just thinking about this vision of a story I heard a long time ago. There was a pacifist that was standing outside the White House. And at night, he would hold this candle up in the air, you know, by himself. He would just stand there for hours holding this candle up in the air. And a reporter interviewed him and said, you know, do you honestly think you're going to change the world by standing here holding that candle up in the air? And he said, well, that's not why I'm holding this candle in the air. And he's, well, why are you? He said, because I don't want the world to change me. This is a reminder for me to stand true to what I really believe. And I've studied all of your lives, and I know that each of you have kind of had that candle that you said, look, this is the thing I believe in, and I am going to persevere. And really, it brings back to, I know, if any of you are like me, your thought is, well, what if you don't have air cover from a senior executive in your organization? How do I make the change if I don't? So that's the next line of questioning. How do you hold the candle? How do you not let it change? How can you begin influencing? And so let's just open that dialogue. Anyone?
I can jump in. So one of the things that we've been doing over the last several years is being very deliberate about how we try to educate everyone all the way up the chain about the trends that are impacting our industry. And I'll go back to Srini's opening keynote. Every business is a digital business, regardless of what products and services you sell. And ours is no different. Yes, we're a 100-year-old company, but we're going to be impacted by everything Srini said, right? Self-driving cars, home automation, all the things that go around with that. It's going to dramatically change our business. We already have competitors doing pay-as-you-drive insurance, right? And it's getting hooked up with OnStar, and it just, you drive the car, you pay. If you don't drive, you don't pay. It changes the pricing model, it changes the distribution model, it changes everything. And so we've tried to educate in a very systematic way, not just our senior leaders, but even our board of directors, right? And getting in front of them and telling them, hey, these are these mega trends that are coming down. And it may not feel like it's real close, but it is. It's closer than you think. And getting them to embrace kind of taking a much broader view.
Great. Thank you. Others?
Well, we try to create a culture that, I guess that would be a question that we don't hope is not asked. You know, how do I get air cover? You are the air cover. So we draw all of our org charts. We put the customers and vendors at top. You know, who's closest to them. We don't have managers. We have facilitators within our organization there to facilitate, you know, getting the resources to the people that are closest to the customers and vendors. It's not lip service. It's not a gimmick. It's meant to say, you know, we're all here to drive that innovation, and we're listening to our customers and our vendors that way. So hopefully no one in our organizations would be looking for air cover because they're creating the air cover.
I would say people respond to passion, consistency. So I think, there's a book that I read called Tribes by Seth Godin. And one of the things that he said in the book is that continue leading, and eventually even your opposition will join you because they realize you're not going anywhere. You're not going to stop. And so that's kind of how I would approach this, just the passion and consistency. Eventually, it can be frustrating and you may not get where you want to go right away, but I think eventually, especially if you're working in a company that, understands change is necessary at some point, I think eventually you'll get there.
Great.
I think that's, consistency. I think that's important. That was a good word to use there. So start small, deliver some value, and then consistently move on. And I think there's also an element of just being respectful in the organization, because there are those people who are the naysayers, understanding who is on your side, and understanding, can you influence someone that's maybe a naysayer, or can someone who's on your side, just being smart about how you kind of navigate that influence graph that you build around what you're trying to accomplish, and then being consistent, starting small, delivering, and then kind of let your work product show for you.
That's great. That's great. So we all face opportunity every day. If we keep our eyes open, we can look for it. There's a book called The Luck Factor. If anybody ever heard that book, make a note. It's a really great book. And this guy did intensive research on what are the things that make people feel lucky, and there really isn't a lot of luck to it. It's what they see. It's when you keep your eyes open for opportunity. It's having a mindset that says, opportunity is available to the prepared mind. It's like this idea of, if you can see and look for it, look for those opportunities. I know I have deliberately positioned myself accidentally in front of people's offices and in hallways and having conversations to get in front of people and talk to people, and making those opportunities happen. And I can say, that's how this team. My dream is that each of you would feel as though you were sitting at the table with just one of these innovators, and that you could ask them the questions. I mean, it's just that personal. And so my thought is, my father is 82 years old, and he takes time to speak life into my kids. And I have to say, he can say things to them that I can't say. Anyone? Right? He can say things, he can convey messages. So I just want you to imagine that, you're speaking to your child, even if you don't have it, think of it, you're speaking to a young person. What would you say to them about how they can be the leader of their life? How can you create new ideas and bring those new ideas? What would be your nugget? What would you say? Don't ever forget this, or do this consistently. What would it be?
Well, I've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but whenever I talk about innovation with anybody, and certainly with my kids, I talk about having the advantage of having ignorance and no money. I want to make sure that people are clear. It doesn't take any kind of special skills. You don't have to be highly educated. You don't have to have a lot of resources. Anybody can be innovative. And one of the interesting things when I started getting into entrepreneurship and studying entrepreneurs, you look at the difference of just kind of a Bill Gates and a Sam Walton, two equally successful people, but one person worked well into their late 40s before they started their innovation. The other one dropped out of college when they started their innovation. Very different backgrounds, and you see that a lot. So I think it's important first to understand anybody can be innovative. And we were talking a little bit about this before we came up, that I think sustainable competitive advantage, you've got to think about what's unique about your resources, your capabilities, I think the last one of any kind of meaning is brand, starting early and building that brand. And who are you? What are you true to? Figure out your personal passions, what you care about, and then stay true to that. And then figure out a way to communicate that in everything that you do. So I got my 12-year-old and my 14-year-old, I got a 24-year-old too. From very young, they started their own websites. And so my son's into drumming right now. I said, put a song, throw it on your website. Who cares if 7 people see it? Maybe it'll be 70, maybe it'll be 7,000, but it's part of you now, it's part of your brand. Just continue to think about what that brand's gonna be. And I think that's important, both personally and then as you evolve it into an entity later.
Great.
Just a quick piggyback on that, I agree completely. We were talking, like you said, we were talking about the brand, but also just approach everything with confidence. Everything that you do, anything that you're involved in, confidence is very important. I think confidence actually rubs off on people. And also, if you want people to be convinced of what it is that you're saying and doing, they have to know that you're convinced of it as well. So that's the advice that I would give on top of that.
I think you guys hit a lot of them, but the one thing I would add is grit. I think if I could use another word, it would be grit. Just, perseverance to kind of push through and to work hard, and find that thing that you're passionate about, and then apply grit.
That's great.
There's not much left to add to all your comments, but I like with my kids specifically, we try to teach them to be very curious about a wide range of things and never stop learning.
Good. It is really important. It's just how we think and how we influence those thoughts. It's to just be willing to be alone at times, right? Sometimes you just feel alone, don't you? Do you ever say to yourself, I feel like I'm the only person that sees this. How can I begin to be no longer the only person that sees this, right? And, as a part of that, some really great questions that have been given here. I'll just read this one. How do you identify problems that are good candidates to become opportunities that are worth pursuing?
We've got a framework. I always try to go first, and I can get all the good stuff out. I'm just going to talk.
We're going to be cutting
quickly. Yeah, we've got a framework. No, but the way we think about it from a venture capital perspective, you're trying to invest in those new innovative ideas. And sometimes we come up with them. About a third of the time, we actually greenfield something around our office. We'll build the team. We'll invest in that. A third of the time, we're investing in someone's business at a fairly early stage, kind of that fledgling stage. And a third of the time, we're investing in something that's up and running. But the framework's typically the same. We look at big worldly issues. So I'm a futurist fanatic. I'm always looking at what's coming up next, cars that drive themselves or whatever it may be. Today we talk about energy, we talk about homeland security, we talk about personalized medicine. And then our specific lens that we filter that through is our core competencies, I talked about brand, our sustainable competitive advantage. We've spent our whole life in marketing and logistics innovation. So we'll chop those things down and say, how is marketing and logistics innovation going to affect this? What technology could we build? What capability could we apply? And then the last thing, so I'm drawing a Venn diagram if you can't see it. Those are two circles. And the last circle is getting the right people engaged that can drive that forward. This is the same circle that any venture capitalist, smart people, big markets, big opportunities that we can do. So that's the kind of big worldly issues. What are we good at? And then does it have the attributes for lots of growth and opportunity? So that's how we would address it.
Great.
I was going to say something similar, but it's structuring the problem, right? So it's taking the time to work your framework and be very clear on exactly what you're trying to solve and what you're not trying to solve, and doing that in a very collaborative way so that you have a broad base of agreement on exactly what you're trying to solve, and it's very clear, and there's clarity and structure on what's in and what's not.
Great.
I would just say research. I mean, I think that if you do a basic amount of research in any industry, you can figure out what's missing. Or there's a lot of literature, and it's a benefit of Google nowadays. You can figure out what's missing. But then also having a team of people who are constantly thinking, so it's not you that's always trying to create and trying to think of what's necessary, but also a team of people who are thinking of the same things and then bouncing ideas back and forth. And very soon, the opportunities will become kind of apparent.
Yeah, I guess I'll answer it a little different because I can see now going last isn't that great. We have a framework, and it's totally about getting the right people. But I want to key on something a little different. Sometimes being an innovator or being innovative doesn't mean that you have the ideas or you thought it up. I think, so many times I latch on to somebody else's idea and I get excited about their idea. And then it's a matter of finding the right people to kind of help at least prove out or test some of the assumptions. So I would say, make sure you're listening to those other folks, because a lot of times being able to kind of identify those is where they really come from. And then, run them through the framework and everything else.
Great. So a theme of questions as well is regarding, time, right? How do we have time to innovate? when we're so busy maintaining the things we've got to, keep those. We did juggling yesterday, for those of you who missed it. I did not juggle, however, but there are some jugglers in the room. And isn't that what we kind of feel like we're doing when we're managing our busy lives? So I have a two-part question, and we can start with the business side first, but I want to get personal with how you manage your own personal time, because we're all struggling with that. It's a reality. But I'm going to let Brent go first, actually. I know. I'm going to have you go first. Regarding here's the question. For innovative teams to have time to stop, breathe, and think, how do you make time for innovation with rapid and aggressive delivery and customer needs?
Wow. So, our old framework around innovation was there was a timesheet entry that when you're working, you could book like 4 hours to innovation, and that used to drive me nuts. And I used to tell everybody in Cardinal, oh, hey, get ready. I'm going to be innovative for 4 hours or creative, and then I'm back. Okay, now I'm back, right? And it doesn't work. And what I firmly believe is that you need to create that environment. You need to have the right tools. You need to inject creativity into the environment. That's just how they work. And then innovation will clearly be an output from that, but it can't be time boxed. Now, I will say we've had some talk around at least being big and visible with the things that you want to innovate with. So we created this thing called Spark Time, and we're sticking it up on the wall, and each person can kind of say, hey, I want to innovate around this thing. And it can be something like, I want to go from Dojo to Ember, right? Some people are really into that. And what I'm finding is, they're coming in on the weekends to do this. They're really into this thing. Or it could be a team in Memphis that we have said, hey, I want to eradicate urban food deserts. I see a lot of them around here where there's just junk food at the 7-Eleven. How can we go to the local farmers and kind of bring food in? And I want to create an app that does all that. And are you okay if we do that kind of thing on the weekend or even during the week? So that's another interesting Spark Time thing that I thought was actually pretty cool. And it does sort of tie to healthcare because it's more of a wellness thing, keeping people from going to the ER. So long story, I guess. You have to kind of make it a way they work.
Great, thank you. Others?
I would just, again, passion. I think passion, I'm going to always start everything with passion. I think if you have the passion for anything, you'll find the time for it. And I think that's true for everything in life, including relationships and business. And then also having a team, like you said, of people that you interact with. And the passion eventually will lead you to think. And you're going to keep thinking all day long until you go to sleep. And sometimes in your dreams, you're going to be thinking. And so eventually ideas are going to come to you, even in the weirdest of moments or in the weirdest of situations, but I think it all starts with the passion.
That's great.
I was going to say, even in big companies, there's really no shortage of ideas, right? But usually the problem is, this is my own personal opinion, the problem usually is that the processes around fostering ideas and projects and funding are built around eliminating risk, and so that usually means they weed out things that are risky or have a chance of failure. What we've tried to do is, for things that we think are risky or need to be widely socialized to gain kind of commitment and buy-in and support, we do low-fidelity prototypes, right? And if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a prototype's worth 1,000 pictures. That's not mine, that's a Stanford Design School quote. But I mean, a lot of times the people that actually control those funds or give you the permission to actually devote your time to something, you have a much better chance of success if they see something tangible, even if it's low fidelity, right? And they can see how it works.
Great, thank you. And I promise I didn't really mean for you to go last, Rich.
Oh, it's perfect, perfect. All that. Yeah, and put a little more on it. Just the point is to have lots of points of innovation. You gotta have time. You've got to make it culturally acceptable to have time. We always promote to our entrepreneurs, don't work in the business, work on the business. You got to have your slogans. You just got to give it the resources. You got to create the skunk works. And there's a lot of ways that you can, like you were just describing, run contests, build something, put dollars towards it, and make it clear that if you come up with something, that it can get out and funded and so forth, and then promote those success stories really, really aggressively. So we've had a lot of our companies that have started with, we had one this past summer that someone was interning at one of our portfolio companies, and they came up with an idea while they were there for another company. We funded that company. We started it. It's it's a 3-person company today. It's still in the early startups, but it's something I want to talk about everywhere, because I want everybody to think that even as an intern here, if you come up with an idea, we're ready to get behind it if it's going to do something that we think is going to add value. So you got to promote the stories as well.
That's great. Everything that you're saying, reminds me again of this idea that we all need some time to figure out how we're going to, focus and, where are we going to put the majority of our thinking, because our thinking drives our action. So we want the heart of your life. We want to understand what drives you. How do you manage and balance all the demands that are on your life? Is there any, this practical advice that you would say, even if you need to look in the mirror and give it to yourself, that's okay too. What advice would you give about how to kind of manage this animal that time just seems to always be not on our side? Anybody?
Well, I was going to say, when you asked the question, I was thinking of what Rich was saying about staying true to yourself, right? And like having a clear understanding of what your own personal goals are, and staying true to those, and just managing very deliberately to that, regardless of what else is going on.
Okay.
I use to-do lists. I know that sounds kind of, maybe old school, but I use to-do lists. Every morning I have, I make a to-do list, 15 minutes. What do I need to get accomplished today? And it really helps me, structure, okay, and sometimes they have deadlines. Certain things have deadlines, sometimes they don't. And I really try to structure my day like that. It helps me tremendously.
That's great.
Yeah.
Even just those simple kinds of things. People talk about doing that, but they don't actually follow it, right?
I guess I use stop-do lists. So literally I've measured some weeks where, I'm not sure 30 hours were as productive as I wanted them to be because I'm sitting in all-day meetings, or the nature of how my job is structured, I get to kind of sit on a ton of different things. And at Cardinal, we tend to like emails and meetings. And when a lot of times people ask me, what do? I say I do emails and meetings. But my stop-do list, there's a bunch of stop-do emails and meetings. And I've kind of got a kitchen pass or a hall pass to purposefully miss a lot of meetings that I was traditionally a member of those committees. As we move out, I'm moving out and I'm stopping doing a lot. Otherwise, you just couldn't get it done.
I think if I kind of introspective about, what I do to motivate myself, or how do I continue to, put the time in, and it certainly comes back to faith and family for me. I have a certain values. I want to leave the world in a better place than I did the day before. I want to inspire the people around me to do the same. And a lot of innovation is just in that vein. Almost everything we do is how do you do that faster, smarter, better? How do you remove redundancies, reduce cost? And you kind of relentlessly focus on those things. But at the core, if I get a little tired, or I have to pay a little money, do I really need to go to work today? I always find that motivation back at that. My faith drives me, my family drives me to want to make the world a little better place tomorrow.
Well, that really leads into the next sort of conversation around our communities. When you create a great community, like I was sharing earlier, and you give back to that community, it comes back to you. Let's talk about Columbus, and the passion and the power that's going on here, and that we can be very innovative. What messages do you have to share with Columbus? What are the things that you're seeing happening? What are the challenges, the opportunities, and things like that?
Well, I'll just talk about from the music perspective, how we kind of decided to attack Columbus in a sense. So now we have the officially licensed Ohio State football anthem, Juice, that you heard playing. It plays in the stadium every game. And how did we get there is interesting. I think we got there 2 ways. One is realizing that Ohio State is obviously such a huge brand and has a crazy fan base. So we were like, okay, that's obviously an opportunity for us to tap into, given the fact that I'm an alum, former football player, and obviously I had arrangements with ESPN and licensing with MTV and so on and so forth. So that kind of created a lane. But then also establishing a brand that we felt like Ohio State could respect. So now we are the only hip hop act basically licensed by a major university in the country. For obvious reasons, there's a lot of liability that comes along with anything bad that can happen. But what we realized is that Columbus has so much passion around sports and around football and around music, and there's a big scene here. So it created an opportunity for us to get involved. So that's something that, at least for my business, that, has become very beneficial for us.
Yeah, and that's great. And think about it this way. All of you mentioned this at some phase of, your conversation, is that you've got to find the right talent to help bring change. And so what are we doing to foster that for young people to want to stay here and grow here and, really live out that passion, but stay here and find it here. So let's continue that dialogue.
Well, you hit on one of my most passionate points. I'll jump in here for a second. So Columbus is an awesome town. I think one of our biggest limitations is we're Midwesterners. We define success as not failing. We tend to move a little slower. We don't necessarily have a lot of pride in our momentum. I was on the Chamber of Commerce for a while, getting the Center for Entrepreneurship off the ground here at Ohio State. It was unique that Ohio State, being one of the largest institutions 10 years ago, didn't even have a Center for Entrepreneurship. 15 years ago, it was actually illegal to commercialize something out of Ohio State because we were a land-grant institution and our laws hadn't even caught up. So culturally, we had some work to do. But the last 10 or 15 years, a lot of that work's been done. We now have 1,000 students a year coming through an entrepreneurship program at Ohio State. Ohio State has grown to almost $1 billion a year of research, and they're starting to put a lot of effort on commercialization. And if you go back, a lot of the first ANSI standard happened here in Columbus. The first paperless check happened here in Columbus. The first internet transaction happened here in Columbus at CompuServe. And so we've had a lot of innovation here, but we really don't talk about it, we really don't think about it, and we don't cultivate it. And I think as I look at the last 10 years or so, those resources have come together, and events like this are now happening here. We hosted the National Black Enterprise Entrepreneurship event here last week in Columbus. We had entrepreneurs from all over the world coming to Columbus, Ohio because of our innovation. And we embrace different groups and organizations here. We have the second highest per capita student group in Columbus. We have a very diverse community and a very accepting community. I just think we're on the edge of something really special here. And congrats to all you to be part of it. Those of you that live here. Those of you that are going back, sorry.
Yeah. And really this applies to Ohio, so most of us are in this region and some of us are coming from a little far out, but you can carry that torch to your own communities. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I guess I'd just add on, we were talking a little bit about this in the back, but I think Columbus is a unique town where the large corporations, they don't really compete against each other as much. You'd be surprised how much collaboration goes on between the Cardinal Health, the Nationwides, the Huntington Bank, and the limited brands. There's a lot of Columbus 2020. There's some work with Tech Columbus. There's some work with Battelle. We're fortunate to have Battelle. We're fortunate to have Ohio State. So I think there's a real opportunity with the amount of dollars that those large corporations have to invest in innovation, in technology, in changing their markets to work together. That's pretty special. I've even heard a lot of people talk that a lot of other cities don't have the collaboration or willingness to work together that we have here.
Absolutely.
All right. So one of the things that I find really significant is when you're trying to see something new and lead something and you're figuring it out, it's this gray area. It's in your mind, it's what you think that drives you. And obviously the things that we listen to, the things that we read, the people that we spend time with, I don't care if you pick a book or maybe websites or places where you get your information, but what do you fuel your mind with? What are you looking at and reading, even if it's something fun time. So just kind of share about what can people connect to as far as learning and growing and reading that will drive their ability to produce an incredible output. Anyone?
Malcolm Gladwell books.
Malcolm Gladwell, okay. And any favorite books or books that you would recommend, books you're reading now?
I think in general, I subscribe to if you teach, you learn. I know there's a lot of smart people in the room. If you get invited into a classroom to be a speaker or invite yourself into a classroom. Go teach and interact with students today. And I'd say all the way down into the K through 12 even. I learn a ton from teaching in 6th grade classrooms. It is amazing, the innovation. And running little business plan competitions and going to the latest accelerator programs and seeing what's happening there. Just interacting. The more you're interacting, the more you're coming to events like this, the more you're hanging out with other people. And again, put yourself in a position where you're teaching, but you're really going there to learn. Yeah.
Great. Definitely great mindset there. Anyone else?
I was going to say that the books I'm reading now are Lean Startup by Eric Rice. It's a great book. I recommend it. And then McKinsey Way and the McKinsey Mind, mainly because at my company, we have some senior execs from McKinsey, and I personally need to know how their brain thinks to be successful. Yes.
Cool.
I'm still trying to get through the Jobs book, a lot of the Lean Startup series, things around Lean Canvas, how can we get things kind of off the ground fast, how can we figure out what ideas we want to test to roll through, and then probably the thing I do the most is just Flipboard every day. I kind of subscribe to a bunch of different things there, and it's my 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night, just how can I aggregate as much content quickly.
Just on the book thing, my favorite innovation book, I forced my kids to read it. It was How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci by Michael Gelb.
I gave that book away yesterday.
It's just a fun little book, and take some time and do the exercises, but it forces you to think. And when you're trying to get a collaborative group together, and what's your passion, and people can't always articulate it, one of the very first things you do is this kind of 100-question mind mapping exercise, and it just forces you through a process that you might not naturally do to get to an outcome that's very natural. And I've always found that to be a valuable toolkit.
Okay. Any other comments? So I just want to I have a couple things later, but I want to have you all have some dialogue. What would you've been preparing, you talk to each other, what kind of questions would you have of each other?
That is interesting.
Like, I'm pretty excited. I want to learn more about how in the world he went from football to law to, music. I'm kind of interested in knowing a little bit more about, some of those. How did you make the move, and how did you have the courage to do it?
Yeah, I think, the passion for music stemmed from, when I was a kid. I mean, I'm the youngest of 4. All my siblings love music. My parents love music. I was a big athlete, here in Columbus, state champion in soccer and football at St. Francis de Sales. And, I was always kind of just driven by, sports and music and just, competition. And music also provided, a rush, I would say, for me, like, being on stage and interacting with people, like you said, and kind of getting feedback from people and that collaborative thing. But like I said, I come from a very educated family, and my brothers and sisters are all doctors and lawyers. Parents have 10 degrees between the two of them. I mean, that's the type of family I came from. So it wasn't really an option whether I wanted it to be or not. And, but they instilled the values in me that made me believe that it was important as well. And so what I decided to do was realize that since I do have this passion, how do I use education and use it in a way that it will help me when I eventually do jump out? And so that's kind of how I pursue the path of education. So now, the licensing deals that I negotiated those myself. Saves a lot on lawyer fees.
Yeah.
So
he's the guy to know in the room, right?
We're all
Yeah. I'm talking about if I need to negotiate a licensing thing,
sure.
which I have to negotiate often, right?
Right. So, but again, the passion. I mean, I keep saying it, and I hope it's not annoying but it all started with the passion, and the passion kept me up at night. It keeps me up in the morning. I mean, it gets me up, it gets me going, and I just feel like eventually, like I said, I feel like I have a bigger purpose. I didn't think my particular purpose was to be an associate in a law firm, building business for them. I felt like I had something that needs to be spread to the world, a message and a unique kind of positioning, and I kind of accepted the obligation, I guess.
That's great. That's great.
I have a question for Brent.
Great.
So you've got this new lease on life, set up a devoted group outside of the corporate eyeballs to some extent. A lot of startups go through a learning phase, and then they have to pivot, which might actually kind of pivot against what the initial strategy was. Do you have enough leash to make that pivot? Or, I mean, like how loose is that connection? How tight is that connection with the mothership?
I think it depends on who you, if you ask the CFO, it's pretty tight leash. If you ask other people, it's maybe not as tight as a leash. You know, I think one of the interesting things is we brought some commercial technology products with us that, you know, first and foremost, we needed to hit those milestones and deliver on those. And by delivering on those, kind of gave us the rights to kind of play and do this other work. And we've really brought a lot of that lean startup thinking into the executive steering committees, so they realize that we're going to build and we're going to learn and we're going to pivot when we need to on the new stuff, all while the 6 or 8 existing products, and they're going through their change as well. They're going through all sitting around a table together with the Scrum Master, and, you know, moving from modified waterfall with, you know, quarterly releases to delivering value to the customer every 2 weeks, and so getting through that change is enough, but then doing that in a way that we're still hitting our commitments or exceeding them, I think gives us quite a bit of leash on the new stuff. We have I wouldn't call it a venture fund, but we put some money aside for R&D for things that we haven't thought of yet, and I think they realize that a lot of those things we're going to spend $200,000 and fail, and I think we'll probably even celebrate those failures because we're in a risk-adverse environment, and they realize for us to innovate, we need to be in an environment that supports a little more risk. So I think I'll be able to fail on quite a few of these, and they'll actually celebrate it. I'm personally hoping that a few of them we hit out of the park, but.
I have a question for Rich.
Go.
As an entrepreneur, from an entrepreneur perspective, how do you know when to sell? How do you know when to say, okay, we've done what we needed to do here, let's sell it and move on?
Yeah, I think this is always an awkward moment for an entrepreneur, and I had to get pushed by friends to sell my first company. I just assumed I was going to hold on to these things forever. I had 8 of them. I had 8 companies kind of in the mid to late 90s, and my friend said, you know, Rich, you don't have to just hoard companies, you can sell them. And so, you know, we started to actually, you know, get together a good leadership team around that, a board around it, and a philosophy's developed over the years since. It's pretty simplistic today. When someone calls, it's probably the right time to sell. And what do we mean by that? The market's heating up. So if you're in a business sector and you're starting to get interest, you're starting to get outside calls, those are VCs or strategic buyers, it means the market's probably trading at an unfair premium. Our average sale of a company is running about 6 times revenue right now. Most companies sell at, you know, 7 times to 10 times EBITDA, depending on the market and the trending. So to be able to sell on revenue, you're selling it, you know, selling on a dream, and a lot of that dream has to be kind of right place, right time. So if someone's calling, it's probably a good time to sell. The second thing we look at is, have we gotten a fair return? And internally, we just said if we've doubled our money and we've gotten at least a 25% annual return, that's fair. So if someone's willing to offer that, let's take the money. You know, could we convince ourselves, hey, hanging on to another year, it could be worth more? Almost always, but, you know, if you got a fair return, take it. We've had a 96% IRR for 20 years. It means we about double every dollar that we put into a company for 20 years straight. On that basic philosophy is, it's good enough, let's take it. And then the third and the final thing is, I was talking to a friend yesterday. He had a really nice offer on the table for his company. It was a meaningful number, changed his life forever. And he said, I'm just not sure whether I'm going to take that number. And I said, would you pay that for your company right now? Because if you don't sell it, you just bought it for that number. And he's like, no. I said, take it. So that last thing's kind of it's a gut check. It's a personal thing saying, is this the most important thing I can do with my money? And in the venture world and innovation world, you've always got something else too. So if you can imagine, if someone's going to give you $1 for something, you can put that dollar to work getting a better return in another way, and one that you're more passionate about too. You know, it's a good time to sell. So that last thing, it's a little more esoteric, but it's still an important one.
Great. All right. So this thought came to my mind that these guys didn't get where they are by themselves, right? It takes people around you that really support you.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. And, you know, just the story came to my mind. Many of you may have heard the story, I don't know, but several years ago, a woman named, I'm not sure, can you all hear me without my holding the mic? So Shauna McCown, many years ago, several years ago, she was a high school track star, had earned a full ride scholarship to Morehead State University, and right before the end of track season, she was took a quick ride on the back of a motorcycle, unfortunately had an accident and lost the bottom part of her leg. And so she was tragic, obviously, full ride, she changed her life, what am I gonna do? And she was acclimating to this new way of life, and she told her parents, she said, you know, I'd really like to run again. And remarkably, Morehead State University honored her scholarship. And so she went on to Morehead State, she trained. It took a long time for her to go through rehab and get fitted and, you know, really be able to get ready to run. And I read this article that this reporter interviewed her, and he said, what are you doing? What are your goals? Like, not in a negative way, but, you know, you're probably not going to win, so why are you here? And her answer was, you know, I have 2 goals. I want to finish the race, and I don't want to come in last. And so she went on the journey, she ran the race, and actually that's where the article ended, but I actually know somebody who knows somebody, right? I know a guy. And I like the Paul Harvey rest of the story. Do you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she ran this race, and the star athlete ran behind her the entire race, gave up her first seat, ran behind Shauna, and was cheering her on the entire race. You can do it. Don't give up. I'm right behind you. You know, I'm going to help you achieve those 2 goals. You're never giving up. So I wanted these guys to get a chance to say, who is that person or those people in your life? And what would you say? Because this unnamed hero, by the way, this young woman who ran, we don't know her name. So my friend was telling the story, actually right here in Columbus somewhere, and a coach came forward crying and said, that was my daughter that ran behind Shauna. You know, nobody knows her name, but, you know, when you think about it, there's always a story around you. And so who is that in your life as we draw this to a close? And how can you encourage each of them to be that unnamed hero to help somebody else innovate and create? Anyone?
Well, Mecca said it's mom. Yeah,
right? Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Starts with mom.
Are you sticking with that answer?
Well, I have another person too. It's actually my business partner and best friend. We've actually been business partners and best friends for 15 years. We met our freshman year. We lived on the same floor or the same dorm at Ohio State.
Can I try his name out?
Sure.
Viswant Korapati. How'd I do?
Good. He's actually in the back.
And actually, Viswant, you're the reason I told that story, okay? Because I wanted to make sure he had a chance to say something.
Well, you know, when you're pursuing anything that's difficult, I mean, there's going to be a tremendous amount of opposition from the outside world, but also self-doubt. And that's the thing that I think people don't factor in a lot of times. How do you manage that? And so this goes to what your question is, having somebody who believes in you, even at times when you don't believe in yourself, is priceless. You know, and one thing that, you know, just so happens that he's here, so it's probably embarrassing for him, but, you know.
That's okay. We're okay with embarrassing you.
Yeah, having someone that, he's believed in me and what I was trying to do, even at times when I was wavering or not necessarily sure. So, I mean, just realize, so I actually take his blessing and I try to pass it on to other people as well, because I realize how important that is to have someone that, no matter what the world tells you when you're out there, that when you come back home and you talk to the people that are close to you, right, that they're gonna keep encouraging you and make you feel like you can do it.
That's awesome.
I'm not gonna follow that.
Rich, maybe go last, man, I don't know.
You know, I would say it's a couple as well. It's, you know, the team that sort of believes in the same dream and is working hard and applying that same grit. You're clearly not successful without them. It's my boss who sometimes takes me kicking and screaming into new opportunities because, I get comfortable too. And she does a really great job of, now you got to try this, now you got to try this, and always kind of pushing me to learn. And then probably most importantly, it's my family. It does take a lot of effort and time, commitment to pull some of this stuff off. So, I call my wife, she's like high command. She's running the 3 kids around everywhere and making sure kind of everything is taken care of. And, clearly wouldn't be successful without that as well.
That's great.
I was going to say, I think everyone needs a coach or a mentor. It doesn't have to be a paid relationship, right? It could be just someone that you've worked for in the past, current boss, former boss, colleague, that you can have as a consistent, compass that knows and supports your long-term goals and can help you make sure you're on track, be a sounding board. I think everybody needs to have that relationship, and that can, as you traverse your career, that can change, can be a different person, but I think it's something that can be very valuable in your career.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So luckily for me, I've had lots of inspiration points in my life. Starting with my father, he was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. Great-grandfather was an entrepreneur. My wife's an entrepreneur. Her father was an entrepreneur. Everybody I've been surrounded with. So it's just kind of natural that I was going to do something, and I had that lead to follow and that kind of constant support that try your own thing. I have a lot of passion for Columbus because Columbus really embraced me. In fact, your 2 organizations, so Jerry Jurgensen, who's a former CEO, is now an investor, a friend. He reached out very early for us. Bob Walter was one of the people who's already very successful with Cardinal. I reached out and I had some questions, and I tell the story all the time that he gave me advice that was just really pivotal in how I thought about the business early on, and they just gave it themselves so freely. My wife is certainly there all the time. Paige is, whenever anything's going wrong or not supportive, you'll be fine, you'll get through it, you always get it. It's just always kind of supporting and working up. And I think my kids, kind of having grown up and see that, I see them already doing it with me too. I mean, they won't let me have a bad day either. So I got a great support group that's always kind of pushing me.
Well, the bottom line is this, there is a method to my madness, and the idea is that, I've looked into their lives, and I know that not only have people helped them, but they have made a significant effort to put other people first. And I believe everyone in this room, you have the power to create. You can be innovative. You can change your world, your corner of the world. It has to start somewhere, but it has to start with you. And at the very least, know that you can be the encouragement to someone else. If you're afraid to innovate, hang out with innovators. So the idea is this: you can do this. Visualize this as we close. They are behind you in this race, and their voices are encouraging you to step up, stand up, lead it, go do it, and go out and change the world. And give this panel a hand. Thank you. A few of them are going to hang around after if anybody wants to chat, and Mecca Dawn is going to be at a table downstairs. He has CDs and conversation and photo op. I know I want an autograph and a photo op. Sorry, you guys, but I'll get yours too, right? But he can sing. And give it up for this panel again. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.